This is For the Governed, a podcast series brought to you by Athalonz. Here are your hosts, Tim Markison and Ron Cates.
Welcome to the Athalonz podcast. I'm Ron Cates. With me is Tim Markison, the founder and CEO of Athalonz. This is the second in a three-part series, so make sure you go check out the first one and the third one. This is all about the key aspects of a golf shoe, and it really applies to a lot of other athletic shoes as well. But today's discussion is going to be about how the forces traverse within the shoe between the ground and the foot.
Right. So just to recap, the three key aspects are how the shoe engages with the ground, and that was in part one where we talk about the friction forces of the tread pattern. Like you said, this one is dealing with the forces through the shoe, and then the third one is how the foot interacts with the shoe.
So we talked about then in the first of the series, the traction aspects, and how you have to have great traction in some areas, great friction in some areas, but also be free to move in other areas. And you've created an outsole that accomplishes that. It's the only one on earth because it's patented. Right. And now you're going to talk about how the rest of it, the middle part happens.
Right. As we've talked about before, when our body pushes on the ground pushes back. The ground pushing back is called ground reaction force, and we've talked about that. But our body weight plus our muscle contraction is the force that we're pushing into the ground. So it's the muscle contraction that allows us the ground reaction force to overcome our weight and allow us to move. Now, how those forces are manipulated through the shoe affects the golf swing and how much energy we're going to have. So within most golf shoes that we've looked at, they have a U-shaped in the forefoot. So if you were to cut the toe off and look in the shoe, it's kind of smiling at you. Now, it'll vary how much of a U-shape from shoe to shoe.
I come from the shoe industry. I know why they do that.
Please share.
I'll share. Because it's cheaper. That's why. Yeah. When you're manufacturing the shoe, that slight curvature makes it easy to slip the last on and off, so it makes it less expensive to manufacture the shoe. There's no performance benefit to it. In fact, it's a performance negative over a level shoe.
Right. So what's happening to ground reaction force because of that U-shaped? You're trying to keep the weight on the inside of your legs. I mean, that's a standard term that golfers use, baseball players use, trying to keep your weight on the inside of your legs, which means that your knee is kind of on the inside of a line. If you're going to draw a line from your ankle to your groin, you want the knee on the inside of that. So that's what they mean by keeping your weight on the inside of your legs. Well, with a U-shaped shoe, that's actually pushing the ground reaction force away from your body. Now, what happens to that ground reaction force is part of it is going to go up our leg, and then there's going to be a component that we call leakage force. And based on the angle of our leg and how far the ground reaction force is pushing away from our body, that creates an angle. That angle will dictate the magnitude of the force going into our body and also the magnitude of the leakage force. So the bigger that angle, the less force we have going into our body, less athletic force, greater leakage force. So by shifting that ground reaction force so it's going more towards the body, we're shrinking that angle. By shrinking that angle, we're getting more athletic force into the body, and we're shrinking that leakage force.
How exactly did you do that, though, with the shoe?
So what we did in the Athalonz shoe, and we have several patents on this, is instead of that U-shaped in the forefoot, if you cut the toe off, we actually have a little bit of a slope from the lateral edge to the medial edge, so from the outside of the shoe to the inside of the shoe. And it's about 3 to 4 degrees, depending on the size of the shoe. But that's enough to shift the ground reaction force inward. And with more force going into the body, it's the force is what the body uses to create the power. So from a physics standpoint, power is force times distance over time. So how far I move my body in a given time dictates my power. So if I'm increasing my force and keeping the distance of my golf swing the same and the timing of it the same, well, I'm correspondingly increasing my power. So by shifting the ground reaction force more towards your body, you have more power. I mean, that's basic physics. The other thing it does for you is it creates a more stable base. So with the ground reaction force pushing away from your body, as you're getting into that load, a lot of people sway to keep their balance because the force is pushing you away. So your body's going to tend to go that way when you're putting more weight on that back leg. So that creates timing issues as well. So it adds more moving parts to the swing. And with any athletic movement, the more moving parts there are, the more things that can go wrong and creates more misses. So by eliminating sway, not only do you remove those extra components to the swing, but you also make the swing more efficient. So you get your timing of it is faster. So not only are we getting more force, but we're also doing it in less time. So the power is going up even greater. And with that more consistent base, more stable base, the consistency of the swing is better. So players are noticing more distance, but the more elite players comment more about less misses than more power.
I have a question for you because I have a theory, but I don't know physics like you do. So when we started cutting shoes, taking shoes apart, cutting them in half, we bought every major shoe out there. And my expectation was that they were all going to be flat inside. And since ours is not, it works to your advantage. And these other ones being flat, I was assuming, doesn't help you at all like ours does, but it doesn't hurt you. And I was really surprised to find that almost every one of them, to cut corners in manufacturing, they were slightly rounded, this like a smile, U-shaped, where that actually works against you. Am I right?
Absolutely. Like we said earlier, that's pushing ground reaction force away from the body.
And a flat one wouldn't help you, but it wouldn't hurt you as much as that.
Right. It would, if it were flat, then the ground reaction force would be perpendicular to the ground. So it's shrinking that angle with respect to the ground reaction force pointing away. But ours take it even further inward. So we further reduce that angle. The more we can reduce that angle between the ground reaction force and our leg, the more force we have going up into our leg and the less leakage force that there is. And leakage force just creates inefficiency in the swing. It causes us to sway. It doesn't allow us to get as much hip rotation. So the more athletic force we can create, the less leakage force we can produce, then the more efficient our swing is going to be.